How are you? It's Kevin Kenny. We are live on the Build series here in New York City, and our guest today just dropped his 5th studio album, Late Nights And Longnecks, last Friday, and is nice enough to pay us a visit today. Please, let's give a warm Build welcome to Justin Moore.
Good to be here, man. How are you?
Yeah, this is your first time on Build, huh?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. We've had, I mean, at this point, a ton of country stars on the show. And it's funny for someone like me who grew up in this market, if you will, New Jersey, right over the Hudson River. This was never a huge country market, but then over the past 10, 15 years, you think of stuff like Nash FM. And I mean, you know, now MetLife Stadium, our big football stadium here, has country concerts. Have you seen a growth or a journey just coming to New York over your career?
You know, I have, and I think you hit it on the head when you mentioned radio was a big part of that, because if I'm not mistaken, you guys went decades, if I'm not mistaken, without country radio here. So that was a big part of it. But I will say one of the most common misconceptions that I had when I started my career, when you grow up in the South, you think the only country folks are in the South, and that's completely wrong. You know, we've learned that over the years, this market being one of those who have taught us how wrong we were, because each and every time we get up this way, it's great, man. So I'm glad that, again, radio kind of made its way back here, and that this is a market that we have the opportunity to come play now.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggest radio stations in New York to boot, and that just speaks to the popularity of the music. Yeah. And another thing we explore a lot of times with our country guests is just how fascinating it is, whether it is New York or maybe non-traditional country markets. Like the UK, country is massive. And I think at least what I've found as a fan and getting to talk to people like you, country music will succeed in any community where authenticity is championed, and I think that's really the root of country music. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's well said. Country music, the genre as a whole, I think we pride ourselves in being authentic, and I think maybe we do as good or better job in our genre at providing insight as to who we are as human beings, as well as what we want to say as an artist. And, you know, people usually want to know what you sound like on the radio, obviously, or now, however you listen to music, or what you look like on TV or stuff like this, which generally is a disappointment when it comes to me. But that's what this hat's for. No, I'm kidding. But I think, you know, I think letting people in a little more than is more important sometimes than all the other stuff that I just mentioned.
And you've always been tremendous about that. It's something your fans really love about you. And is it right that your team around you early on, you know, some people in this business, I don't think it's any secret, get what they call media trained, right? They prep you for interviews like this. Was it true early on, though, the people around you were like, do not even, you know, don't even go near Justin. Let him be Justin.
That is true, yeah. I don't know what to attribute that to, but yeah, they were actually getting ready to put me in media training, which that's what they, at the time, did with everyone. So you're talking maybe 12 years ago. And I did a couple of interviews, and I just went out there and talked like I was, you know, talking to a buddy back home. We were just having a conversation, and then that's when they said, okay, we're not sending him to media training. We don't want any of that hillbilly to wear off of him. So...
So you grew up in Arkansas.
I did, yeah.
Did you move around, or was it just basically entirely Arkansas?
No, it was the same town of 300 people that I live in today.
It was really 300 people?
Really 300, probably less, to be honest with you. I know it was less before my wife and I and our brood of children moved back. We upped the population by a pretty good percentage there. But, no, I moved to Nashville in 2002 because I knew that I had to in order to pursue this and have any opportunity at all at succeeding. And so it was always my intention, that being said, to move back home. And once I had my career kind of up and going and off the ground, the opportunity presented itself for us to move back home. And it was right around the time my wife and I had our first daughter, who's 9, who's here somewhere today with me. And, you know, it's just important to me to be around family, because usually in Nashville, the artists, when we're there, it's because we're off work. You know, I mean, there are times where you have to be there for some business stuff, but it's not often. And so I just got to thinking, my wife and I did, so we'd rather, you know, if I'm off for 3-4 days, we'd rather be around family members, and we go to church where I went to church now. My kids go to school where I went to school still. And so just those things were really, really important to us and how we wanted to raise our family. And it's been really good. You know, it's not the norm. Most people do still live in Nashville, but I think whatever is good for you personally, and from a family perspective in particular, I think it helps you be a better artist too. So I think it's helped my artistry, to be quite honest with you.
Well, how does it inform the art? I mean, that must be so grounding to be so close to your roots.
Yeah, you know, country music. We mentioned we both agree that it's authentic, and it's also, I think it's grown in popularity over the years, but it's always been popular because of people being able to relate to it and apply it, whatever song, whether it's an upbeat song, you know, you're cranking up to celebrate something, or if it's a song like the ones that didn't make it back home that may help you through a difficult time of losing a loved one, and you need to, you know, dive into something like a song like that to help you through it. I think country music does a really good job of that. And for me to be around normal people, you know, my friends and family who are proud of me and proud for my family and happy for us about how we've been able to achieve our level of success, but they don't really care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think it does kind of help you not only relate to people, but in my case, relate to people through music, because as a songwriter, you're always searching for, you know, the next idea for a song, and certainly you go through things in your own personal lives that you write about that people can relate to, but you know, being around you know, folks who have normal jobs and go through everyday life experiences, I think also helps generate some creativity there too.
Yeah, and perspective is just so important, and it must give you that as well. This title, Late Nights and Longnecks, this comes from, is it a song, is it an idea from like 18, 19 years ago? Is that true?
Yes, plus the writing and recording process of this album, there were many of these and probably many more of those. But yeah, it's funny because I wrote a lot of my first 2 albums down in Destin, Florida, which I know you know Panama City well, so you know that area well. But when I first moved to Nashville, my producer and I, we didn't have kids and all the responsibilities we do now, and so we would just drive down to that area from Nashville, which was about a 7-hour ride, and lock ourselves in a hotel room or a house that we had rented for a few days and drink beer and write songs. And so a lot of my first couple albums came from those trips as far as the writing goes. I even recorded a lot of vocals down there in a little hole-in-the-wall studio about the size of this room. And so when we were making this or having conversations about making this album, I said, why don't we go down, and my wife and I have a home down there now, and so why don't we grab a handful of our buddies and go down there and just do it kind of like we did, you know, way back when. And so there were a lot of those, but the song that you're talking about, Late Nights and Longnecks, I wrote about 17, 18 years ago, probably on one of those trips. And I've wanted it to be on an album for my entire career, and I always go, okay, it's going to be on the next album. I just knew for a fact it was going to be on this album. Well, hell, it didn't make this album.
And I was going to say, then it's not on the album. That's hilarious.
So we had already named it Late Nights and Longnecks, and after thinking about it, I thought, well, I still think that the title is fitting. When you listen to this album, I think the title is fitting. So what we've kind of had conversations about is putting it on the next album, which we've had conversations for 12 years about this now, and maybe doing Late Nights and Longnecks, you know, version 2 or something.
Yeah, the
like
sequel.
That. So we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. What inspired in your personal life? What inspired this it was seemingly this return to origin for you, right?
Well, we've always been, throughout my career, I think more traditional leaning than most of what's out there on the radio. And that's something that I'm proud of, but it's just what I enjoy doing. But on the last album, the Kinda Don't Care album, I got outside of my comfort zone a little bit in a few spots, not the entire album, but, we had a hit record off of that album called Somebody Else Will. It was a #1 song for us that it was really a big hit for us, and it was fun for me to do, and that's just one example on that album. It was fun for me to kind of stretch my legs a little bit. But as we discussed this upcoming album, or the album that just came out, I said, you know what, I think I do best is traditional country, and that's what I enjoy doing most. And I'm not old, but I'm 35 and I'm 12 years into my career, and I just thought at this point in my career, I owe it to the fans to give them the best thing that I can give them, which again, this is what I do best, is straight ahead country. And it's what I enjoy doing most. And the older I get, my wife thinks I'm cantankerous and I'm an old man. I say, I just want to do what I want to do. And I think because of that, this was definitely the most fun I've ever had making an album. And I think to be able to say that this far into my career is pretty special. And I also think because of that, this is the best album we've put out, which is our job as artists, is to put out the best we can put out.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's a testament to your craft that 12, 13 years in to be saying that.
Yeah.
I love the title, and I should have said that at the top, but then there's also some great titles. You have a way with them on this album. Jesus and Jack Daniels is another one that jumps out at you. It sounds like a great pro wrestling tag team, but also makes a good country
great
song,
idea,
right?
Actually. Yeah.
But talk to me about Jesus and Jack Daniels, that song, because the title's so great.
Well, thank you. Growing up where I did, and I'm sure it's the same here when you talk about people that you grew up with, I knew families like this. And so for those who haven't heard it, it's a fictional couple that the dad's a bit of a hellraiser. Good guy, but a bit of a hellraiser. Maybe he likes to have a few too many on Saturday night, but his wife makes sure he's in church on Sunday morning. And so she's kind of pulling the reins back on him, which is kind of a fun dichotomy in this song. And maybe there's a little bit of that in me and my wife too, but no, I grew up with buddies who had families like this. My dad didn't drink, and so it's not at all like my parents, but I seen it firsthand, and so I think again to kind of go back to that authenticity and relatability of country music, I think this song is a prime example of that.
How early in the creative process, or at what point, maybe I should ask you, does the title present itself? Or the
title of that song?
Well, any song.
Or the album? Or?
No, just any song.
Oh.
And how important is the title to the song itself?
I don't necessarily think the title is of the utmost importance, but the idea is of whatever song you're going to write. So, I've had songs in the past that we had a really good idea to write the song, and we had it rolling. And we get to like the end of the chorus and we go, well, what are we going to call this? One of our biggest records was a song called Letting the Night Roll. And we wrote pretty much the whole song. We go, I guess we'll just call it Letting the Night Roll, which is kind of an odd title, but whatever. But it was a good idea, and we wrote it well. And but certainly titles can spark an idea. The ones that didn't make it back home, for instance, which kind of just... You kind of know when you hear that title what it's about, really. Some of them are obvious in that way. But I was on stage a couple of years ago now introducing a song we had out about 8 years ago called If Heaven Wasn't So Far Away. And I always talked about our military service men and women and police officers and firefighters and all of the above and a number of groups that I know that I'm leaving out. But I always ended that whole spiel by saying, we'll send this song out to the ones that didn't make it back home. And I've said that for 8 years. I don't know why it took me so long to realize that was a song title. But it just kind of, a light bulb kind of went off, and I thought, man, I got to write that. So I went back to the bus that night and got started on it. So song ideas come from so many different places, and throughout the process. You were asking about the timing. It's not like we have, 20 titles and then we go write 20 songs from those titles. And, a lot of titles and ideas come from us just sitting around BSing. You know what I mean? Me and you just having a conversation, and you tell me a funny story about your daughter or whatever. So that's mostly where the ideas come from. But they also can come from, they can also come from a guitar lick or anything, really.
You find it easier to write a song if you have the title at the start? Does it flow more naturally?
Yeah, I think so, simply because it's easier to gravitate in one direction or the other if you have a title. And the cool thing about having a title is, we could write a title on a piece of paper and you could look at it, and in your brain you're going one way with it and I'm going maybe a different way, and then the conversation that you and I have about that can be really cool, and we intertwine them and it becomes something way cooler than either you're thinking or I'm thinking.
Right.
So, yeah, it certainly helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to some studio audience questions right now for Justin. First one's going to come from over here.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I was wondering some inspirations that you had growing up in your career that maybe led to you to this album.
In music?
Yeah, in music.
I grew up predominantly in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and so the music that was coming out then was really, really traditional country. So you got, iconic, I feel like I'm laying down up here, iconic artists, Alan Jackson, George Strait, Clint Black, Tracy Lawrence, Travis Tritt, all these guys. And so I loved all of that stuff. I love that sound, and I think that had a huge influence, obviously, on the way that I go about making music, and it's why I love doing the type of music that I do. And huge influence on this album. I heard somebody sent me a review of this album. Fortunately, it was positive, because that would have been pretty bad buddy to send me a negative review of it. But anyway, it referenced an early '90s album. Coincidentally, had late Longnecks in the title as well. It was called Longnecks and Short Stories. It was Mark Chestnut's, I believe, second album. And that was the first tape that I ever bought with my own money, and it was a huge album in my life at the time. And I think albums like that led me to this album in my career, and to hear them or to read a review that referenced or kind of compared this album to that one was pretty cool to me.
Surreal, I mean.
Yeah, it was pretty neat.
That's awesome. Great question. Let's get to one final one before we're out of time.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
So I have a friend back in St. Louis that loves your music and is actually going to see you in October.
Awesome.
And she was wondering, what's your favorite song to sing live off the new album?
Off the new album, okay. Yeah. Man, that's a tough one. Probably Why We Drink. It's the first track off the album, and we've been playing it now on stage for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, and it's one of those, and I don't know that I've even had one of these in my career, but it's one of those that by the second chorus, people are singing every word to the chorus, which is really, really cool, and that'll be our next single on the radio. You can tell your friend, and tell her thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
We are almost out of time. Can you tell the story, though, of what inspired that song? Because it's hilarious.
Yeah, so for a few nights on stage, I was introducing the song as a drinking song inspired by my mom, and then somebody, I don't know if somebody in my band or management or somebody said, you might want to elaborate on that just a little bit because that sounds pretty bad. Your mom might get the wrong idea. And so, yeah, I probably should. So my mom and dad and my wife and I live 500, 600 yards from each other. We're close. And so my wife and I have 4 kids. My parents keep the kids. But periodically we have somebody brave enough to watch 4 kids who are 9 and under for us. And my wife and I will go out to dinner with my mom and dad. And so we went to Chili's or Fridays or something like that one night a couple of years ago. And my dad don't drink, which I mentioned earlier, so he drives. The rest of us do. And so I ordered a drink, and then I ordered 3-4 more. Then the salad came, but no, I'm kidding. I'm not that bad. But my mom goes, "Why do you drink so much?" Keep in mind, she's drinking a margarita at the time. I said, "I don't know. I ain't really ever found a reason not to. I mean, it's got me in a little trouble, but not too much over the years." And so I had this idea. I go, because I'm thinking about it, I go, I don't know. If my team loses, I drink. Yeah. If my team wins, I drink. I really honestly can't give you an answer.
Good day, bad day?
Exactly. So I had this idea, and a couple of the guys down there that were writing with me in Florida for the album, I threw this idea out to them. I said, I got this idea called Why Don't We Drink? And one of them said, because it's Friday, because it's Monday, because it's Sunday. I go, all of the above, yes. And so that, in a weird way, it was kind of inspired by my mom.
That's amazing.
But now I'm explaining why.
Yeah.
So it's
context.
So it's not so offensive to her. Yeah.
What's the rest of summer look like for you?
It's busy. You know, the summer's always busy for us with, like, mainly in the summertime, country artists are mainly doing a lot of these big festivals and fairs. And I know we did one here a year or two ago. And so that's always fun. And then we'll get back into out after summer, post-summer, which we're getting close to. We'll get back into, like, the arenas and that kind of stuff.
Totally.
But summer's always busy, in particular when you put an album out in the summer. It just kind of compounds that. So
yeah, especially one this good.
Well, thank you.
Again, Late Nights and Longnecks is out and available everywhere now. Guys, one more time for Justin Moore.